Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a really wonderful English chapter called Every Bite Counts. We've got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to explore a beautiful poem, pick up some fantastic new vocabulary, uncover some pretty surprising global facts, and even look at the building blocks of poetry. Ultimately, we're going to see how our everyday routine choices can actually make a massive difference. But before we jump into the poetry, I've got a question for you. And I want you to be completely honest here. Have you ever left food on your plate after dinner? Maybe you were just way too full, or, let's be real, maybe it was a vegetable you aren't exactly fond of. Hey, we have all been there. But taking a closer look at our own daily eating habits, that is exactly where our journey begins today. Right at the heart of this chapter is the poem itself. Every bite counts. When we sit down to enjoy a big, delicious meal, this poem asks us a simple yet incredibly profound question. Why is it so important to not waste food? And how can tiny everyday actions, like simply finishing your meal or saving your leftovers, actually move the needle and make a real difference? To really unpack that message, let's just break the poem down stanza by stanza. Stanza 1 kicks things off by reminding us to be thankful for our food and not waste it, because literally every single bite is precious. Then, moving to stanza 2, it shifts focus to where our food actually comes from, the intense hard work out in the fields. Because of all that effort, we really have to value it and absolutely don't let it spoil. Stanza 3 swoops in with a super practical solution. Instead of throwing leftover food in the trash, save it. Put it in the fridge, use it later. And finally, stanza 4 gives us a golden rule for the grocery store. When you're shopping, only buy what you actually need. It's the best way to avoid creating waste in the very first place. Now, as we read through poetry, we constantly stumble upon these great wonder words. Our first one today is morsel. So a morsel simply means a small piece or a bite of food. Just think about eating a really delicious meal. Imagine your absolute favorite sandwich. You wouldn't want to leave a single crumb behind, right? You'd want to eat every last morsel. Our next wonder word is cherish. To cherish something means to value it greatly, to hold it dear. In the context of our poem, we're asked to cherish what we have on our plates. When we remember that our food travels all the way from the fields to our tables, thanks to the incredible, back-breaking work of farmers, well, it becomes so much easier to truly cherish every single meal we're lucky enough to eat. And the third word we need to look at is spare, which just means extra or additional. Remember that smart advice from stanza 4? It tells us to choose with thought and care and not pick too much to spare. When we have too much spare food just sitting around in the fridge or pantry, it almost always ends up going bad. So buying exactly what we need, that's a super clever way to stop waste before it even starts. But here's the thing. These themes go way beyond our own kitchens. They connect to some massive global realities. If we look at the causes of food wastage in India and compare them to the rest of the world, we see some pretty striking differences. In India, which is a major top producer of rice and wheat, a huge chunk of food is actually lost simply due to a lack of proper storage and transport. It also gets wasted at massive events, like those big, lavish weddings. Globally, though, in places like the USA, China, and Brazil, most of the waste happens much later down the line. We're talking restaurants, supermarkets, and right inside our very own homes. To really wrap your head around the scale of this issue, just consider this staggering number: 40%. In India alone, nearly 40% of food is wasted. I mean, we aren't just talking about a few scraps left on a plate here. This is a massive portion of the total food produced being completely lost. And as we just mentioned, that's primarily because of those poor storage and transport systems. And when we zoom out to the global stage, the numbers become even harder to comprehend. Roughly 1/3 of all food produced around the entire world is wasted every single year. That amounts to about 1.3 billion tons of food. Just try to picture a mountain of food that large. It's almost impossible. Plus, letting all that food rot contributes to about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a huge, huge factor in climate change. Which brings us to the most heartbreaking contrast of all. While 1.3 billion tons of food is literally just tossed away, approximately 820 million people worldwide still suffer from hunger. So you see, reducing our food waste isn't just about saving a few bucks. It's about making sure we aren't wasting the precious water, energy, and human effort that went into growing it. And, absolutely crucial to remember, it's a vital step toward feeding hungry people and protecting our planet. Now, with issues this massive, knowing how to express these powerful ideas is just as important as the facts themselves. That's where the mechanics of writing step in. Poetry, for instance, uses deep, concentrated meaning to say a whole lot in just a few words. There are three main types highlighted in our source material. First, we have epic poetry. This is the earliest form, and it tells these grand stories of heroic deeds. Think of the great Mahabharata by Vedavyasa. Then we've got lyric poetry, which is normally quite short and expresses the poet's own deeply personal thoughts and feelings. A great example is John Keats's Ode on a Grecian Urn. And finally, there's dramatic poetry. This type actually depicts different characters and can be acted out on a stage, kind of like Christopher Marlowe's Tamburlaine the Great. But to make those different types of poetry sound so interesting and rhythmic, writers rely on poetic devices. We can quickly break down three of the most common ones. Alliteration is when you repeat consonant sounds, like saying jumping jack. It just gives the words a great bouncy rhythm. A simile is a direct comparison using the words like or as. Like saying someone is cool as a cucumber. And a metaphor? That's an indirect comparison. It's saying something literally is something else to make a strong point, like calling a camel the ship of the desert. These are the creative tools that make reading so incredibly fun. And speaking of making reading fun, we absolutely have to talk about verbs, specifically food verbs. Verbs, as we know, are action words. And when we talk about eating, using the perfect action word really brings the writing to life. The textbook gives us a fantastic example, gobble. Because, let's be honest, you don't just eat a delicious slice of pizza. Sometimes, if you're really starving, you absolutely gobble it down. Just think of how many other fun action words you can use when you're describing an epic meal. We can keep exploring language with a really fun activity from the chapter, Food Idioms. So an idiom is basically a colorful phrase that uses certain words, in this case food words, but has a completely different hidden meaning. It doesn't mean exactly what the words say on the surface. It's quite literally food for thought. Here's a perfect example for you, the icing on the cake. Now, we all know icing makes a literal cake taste amazing, but used as an idiom, it means something extra that makes an already good situation even better. For instance, imagine you had a really fun birthday party, and then, right at the very end, you got a totally unexpected surprise gift. Well, that surprise gift was the icing on the cake. Moving beyond idioms, this chapter also introduces some highly unique food vocabulary. First up is a totally fascinating word, umami. Did you know there's actually a fifth basic taste? Alongside sweet, sour, salty, and bitter, there is umami. It's this deep, savory taste, often described as meaty or brothy. It's exactly that rich, satisfying flavor you might taste in a warm bowl of mushroom soup or a really, really good stew. Our next vocabulary word is zest. Zest is the outer, brightly colored part of a citrus fruit peel. Think lemons, limes, or oranges. Bakers and chefs absolutely love to grate this peel and use it to add a bright, fresh pop of flavor to cakes and savory dishes alike. And here is a very fancy word to add to your personal dictionary, piquant. Piquant is used to describe a pleasantly sharp or spicy flavor. If you've ever had a salsa or a snack that has a delicious little spicy kick, one that just tingles on your tongue in a really good way, you can totally impress your friends by saying, "Wow, this has a wonderfully piquant flavor." All right, bringing all of this back to our main theme. The source material shares a really practical story about value skills featuring a student named Natasha. So her school recently organized this big annual picnic. The students had an amazing time and enjoyed a huge variety of delicious dishes. But after the picnic wrapped up, Natasha noticed something pretty upsetting. A whole lot of food had been wasted, mainly because kids were taking big scoops but only eating small portions. She felt genuinely sad seeing so much good food thrown away, especially knowing how much effort went into making it. So Natasha decided right then and there that she was going to speak to her teacher about planning the next picnic in a way that actually reduces all that waste. And that leads us to a final, thought-provoking question for you to chew on today. If you were in Natasha's shoes, what ideas would you suggest to the teacher to reduce food wastage at the next school picnic? Think about everything we've covered today, from the lessons in the poem to the golden rule of buying only what you need, right up to the massive global impact of saving our food. How can you use your voice and your actions to make sure every bite truly counts? Keep learning, keep asking these important questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.